Welcome to the Startup Grind.
Connect, inspire, and learn are the three startup grind values. So hope that you take those on, right? We can only do so much, but the inspiration will hopefully come from Tom, and then some learning as well, and then connecting, right? Hope you get to meet some people and exchange some business cards and say hello, all right? And maybe we should introduce our guest speaker. So, not yet. Very special startup grind, right? We do this for all of our guests, right? We are very, very lucky that we have some amazing guests at Startup Grind. Dan Price, right? Gravity Payments, big deal. Nick Huseby last month, big deal. Henry Albrecht Limeade, big deal, right? So these are literally some of the best and brightest minds in Seattle or in the greater Seattle area. So we like to make sure that we welcome them to the stage with a huge round of applause. So whether you know him or not, if Pete Carroll was walking up on stage, Seattle Seahawks 1-0 right now, right? Maybe not a pretty win, but a win, right? Entrepreneurs, we don't care how we win. We just want to win, right? So if Pete Carroll's coming up, what would you do? Stand up and welcome Tom Huseby to the stage.
Hey.
Woo!
Well, that's cool.
There you go.
Thank you, Jack.
You're welcome.
I actually, well, keep going. That was, wow.
There you go.
I don't know why people on TV say, oh, that's enough. Why don't they do what they do in football and just say more?
Right, absolutely.
Anyway, I'm glad to be here. That's great.
So how many people first Startup Grind? First Startup Grind. Awesome. And Tom's first Startup Grind too,
Yes,
which is
it
kind of
is.
cool,
It is,
right?
yep,
Which
yep.
is fantastic. But
Yeah.
no rookie on the startup scene
No.
by any means. And we'll get into that in a minute. But when did you first think or hear the word entrepreneur and say, that's something I might want to do or explore?
So it'd probably be easier to answer the question, when did I learn how to spell the word entrepreneur, which is not yet.
I still struggle with
Not
that,
yet.
exactly.
Well, no, that's why it's easy to answer. I really don't. I don't think I heard the word entrepreneur, but I do remember the first entrepreneurial thing I did, the first company I tried to start. And it's particularly poignant that that company is here in Seattle, because I tried to be a bookseller. I tried to change the way books were sold. Now, I didn't have the tools.
Brick and mortar.
I didn't have the tools that we have now to change the way that Jeff Bezos had to change the way books are sold. I had the idea, living in São Paulo, Brazil, when I was about 9 years old, that English-speaking books were incredibly expensive. They were very rare. You had to go to the airport and buy them, and people would trade them back and forth all the time. So I had the idea that I would go door to door, no car, public transportation, and I had a starter set of books from my parents, and I was going to trade them 2 to 1. So you could take one of mine if you gave me 2 back. And if you wanted to buy one of mine, you could pay me, let's say, $1. These are Cruzeros. After I had amazing success, incidentally. After only about 8 hours, I had more books than I could carry and no money to get the bus home. It was terrible. I had piles of
take
books.
my books.
Nobody, they all traded, and pretty soon, oh, he's coming your way. He's got hundreds now. And I had bags and bags. It didn't work, but that was my first startup. It didn't work. Most startups don't work, but they're all worth doing. They really are. The people in this room who are thinking about doing a startup or doing a startup, you're what makes the world go round. And I will go as far as it takes to contribute just a little bit of inspiration or maybe some temporary hope. And if that fails, maybe get a laugh, because it'll be the only funny thing that happens to you all week, perhaps. So to help you keep going a little bit.
So why don't you tell them now what you do now then, right? Where
So
all kinds of fun stuff.
I spent, I was educated technically and worked for a big company called Raychem. It was 17 years of climbing a corporate ladder, and it was a great ladder to climb. It was really fun. And then I competed for the top job, totally out of my league, incidentally. I should never have been given the top job. I was more like Patton, and they wanted a Bradley or an Eisenhower. And I went off into the startup world, found a company that actually wanted me to be CEO. It was an ad in the Wall Street Journal. And I answered the ad. The whole ad was bullshit, incidentally. Every single paragraph, I can still repeat them. It venture-backed, wireless telecommunications growth opportunity of the decade, Seattle-based venture-backed. I was just all bullshit. It was in Tacoma. It wasn't wireless
marketing major.
telecommunications. It wasn't backed by venture capitalists. It had some angel investors in it. I mean, the whole thing was wrong. And sort of what I did after 4 years is turn the ad into reality. The ad at least was right at the end. We moved it to Seattle. We got into wireless telecommunications. We did get venture backed, and we went public. And it was the worst 4 years of my life. It was really hard. It was terrible. I left the corporate life, and I was talking earlier. I can't remember who I was talking to. I'd walk into my office, and remember the red message light would be on, and I would open up the door, hoping that the red message light wasn't on, because I'd get there early, and if it was on, it meant that our one customer who was French, had probably called to cancel the order. And that was the way I started every day. It was just, we did so many fundraising miracles. I could write books and books on that first one. Should I do this? Should I just
you should, yeah, you should
away?
go. Yeah,
right,
I'll stop you or whatever, but I'm loving it.
One of my best, fondest moments was we were building these stupid TVRO antennas. I mean, they were so dumb I couldn't believe it. That's not telecommunications. TVRO are TV receive only, dish, Kentucky mushrooms, the backyard, where do you hide it, things. Yeah. And I joined this company that had a new idea for a very old problem, and they were terrible. They didn't work, and they cost too much. So I had tried to raise money on this, and eventually we did a pivot, and we were still trying to sell these old heavy antennas to a company in Switzerland. There's a lake probably that's full of them now. And so we had a small group trying to do that. And meanwhile, I'd pivoted to making communications radios. That was the other part of the ad that was bullshit, and I was trying to make that true too. And I had a group of really smart people working on that, but I had people building these antennas, and we all gathered in the warehouse because our law firm, Bogle and Gates. Does anyone remember Bogle and Gates here? All right, a few people do. Some lawyers. So they were our law firm before I got there, and they found out we had no money to meet payroll. And I said, well, what's new? We've never had any money to meet payroll. I was raising money from the current investors and meeting payroll, but Bogle and Gates found out we hadn't. So they sent a very high-priced Harvard lawyer to watch me read the Working at Will speech. I don't know if you've ever had to read that, but you stand up in front of a group of people who are all looking at you like this, you knowing something's really wrong. And you say, I have no money to pay you. You're all working for free if I can't go raise money, and I won't blame any of you, I promise, if you go home and decide to look for a job and feed your family instead. I mean, it was a little more legalese than that, but I told all that. And then at the last minute, I remembered that I wasn't going to be around because I was busy frantically fundraising, and I thought they might think I'd absconded with the few pennies we had left. So I said, oh, and by the way, I'm not going to be here. I'm going to be out fundraising. And this guy named Corey, who was one of the antenna assemblers, who were recruited solely on their ability to show up for work every day and being relatively strong. And Corey brought the general IQ down quite a few points all by himself. He was a sweet guy, he really was, but he snaps to attention. He goes, fundraising, Tom? And I said, yeah, Corey, I'm going to be fundraising. And he goes, fundraising? I said, yeah. And he goes, we could do a car wash. and for a wild moment, I thought, it might work. I'll never forget that. So that was my beginning to and that company went public eventually. It's hard to imagine, but that was my introduction to the startup world. Well, the first one was the failed book project, and I had many other little things in between. So I've been doing this for a long while now. I've done 22 companies as sort of either the CEO or the chairman or the lead investor. And 6 of them we'll still see. I had 3 of them go public, and 3 got sold for really good money.
Yeah, because right now it's 6,
Yep.
right? Talk about the roles that you're performing now, and I know there are several of those as well.
Well, my wife accuses me of creating a role that only I could fill. So I'm a little reluctant. Don't try this at home, but I'm kind of an active chairman for 6 companies. Most of them are in what I call wireless or mobile. Wireless are the arcane technologies that feed the networks that we all depend on, and soon it will thrive on in ways that are hard to imagine now. Mobile is what you could do with those networks. So I have a couple of companies. One's an RFID, passive RFID company that can read tags 1,500 feet away and locate them, and about to revolutionize the way retailers treat inventory. Press a button, do an overnight inventory. Find an item in your huge store in seconds by just pressing a button, typing in the part number, and it shows up on a map. I've got cell sites going out. I've got in a company called Airspan Networks. Those are on the wireless side. The mobile side, probably the best known in this town, is Glimpse.
Yeah.
So I'm chairman of Glimpse, which is using the networks to share location privately, securely. So there's six total companies. I'm sure, and my role is, I sit there, and it's a good thing most people can't tell the difference between stunned confusion and calm resolve. but apparently I've managed to convince everyone that calm resolve is at my core. I don't panic. I don't know how to say I quit. Literally, it's a character defect. And you know, and I shepherd these companies through difficult times. A lot of what I do is trying to make sure the people in the companies understand that they're working in a high value environment, and it's a place they're going to be proud of having tried and to succeed. Nobody is ever asked to cut any corners that they don't feel comfortable about. Everyone in my companies that I'm involved with, I use loosely, incidentally. I work for small percentages, and everyone knows that I'll tell them exactly what the story is. And so I provide that kind of link to, I dampen fear a lot by just being there. Yeah. And occasionally I come up with a good idea. So.
When you're looking at a company, right? So obviously very mobile cell service network. Yeah. That vertical. Yeah. What do you look for in the company itself? What are some key things that you want to see in that company?
So I fall in love with ideas. When somebody comes and pitches me an idea, I either go, wow, this sounds cool, and then I go, wait a minute, do I actually know anything about it? Right? So I can easily fall in love with ideas, particularly if I don't know anything about the market. So I have to be quite careful about that. So my second, so I'm an enthusiastic person, you can tell.
Yeah, it doesn't show at all.
Right?
No.
So I go, wow, that sounds like a good idea. And then I go, do I actually know enough about the market to really have a valid opinion about that idea? I've talked to 4 or 5 people here who are starting companies, and I was busy giving Mike all of this advice, and I thought, what? This is being recorded and transmitted. So, WTF am I giving Mike
Package
advice?
what?
Right. Why am I giving advice on how to market a product like that? I don't know. I really don't. So, but there are certain companies that I know quite a bit about. You mentioned one, cellular infrastructure. So you have to figure out something that's going to happen about 8 to 10 years from now that is probably not going to be the primary target of the giants in the industry. And you have to figure out whether you could deliver that product effectively. There's a product market fit 10 years out and get there at just the right moment so that the giants in the industry, at least 2 of them, are terrified that you're going to sell to the other one. So you have to have target exits, and the IPO is always the fallback, and you have to be 8 to 10 years out. The problem is you can't tell any of the investors that. Yeah. No investor will invest in 8 to 10 years from now. Oh, it's going to be great. They all want you to bullshit and say, in 4 years, you're going to be rich. And incidentally, all the employees feel the same way. The average overnight success I've had, and I've been very lucky, I've had a bunch of them, is 8 years. Those are the overnight successes. I'm chairman of one company now that I've been chairman of off and on for 20 years. It takes a long while to build a valuable company. And all we read about are the ones that got lucky. the quick flashes in the pan. And
Which are never that, or rarely that, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
like Microsoft. Oh, they got like, there were, I don't know, 10 years where people didn't even get options in that company. And then everything happened late. So anyway, so that's what it's hard. I try to figure out a market trend, and I go, that's going to be a good place to play. How can we survive in the meantime? And what's the big play? Because it's going to be that far out. And it sounds really hard, and it is, to try and look, because everything is going to interrupt that. Everything's going to conspire to stop you from getting there. And when you get closer and closer to that being a reality, the big companies are going to emerge from the woodwork and lie through their teeth about how far they are with the product that you've been working on for a long while. But I look for that. Where will the giants not go initially? How can you get ahead of them? And I patent everything I can. Not because they're going to stop because of the patents, but because that other guy will buy you for a lot more money if you have the patents.
That's your IP, yeah.
So, and then there's some others that I just stumble in by mistake.
A lot of people will talk team and internal workings. Like, how do you look inside the company when you're trying to make that decision of we're going to join? What do you look for there?
There's some VCs, and incidentally, whenever I'm asked questions as a VC in front of a group of entrepreneurs, most of you in this room don't need to go near venture capitalists to be successful, and you really should know that. You may have to go near them to sip wine with them, or to smoke cigars in back rooms that I never go into, and name drop them. But you don't have to go near them to be successful for most companies.
Why do you say that? Because I think that's right. A lot of people think if I'm not funded, or I don't get funded, or if I'm not out pitching my company, then I don't have a valid idea or a valid company.
Right, and that's wrong, right? If you own 100% of your company and you haven't given any of it away to raise money, or very little of it, you don't have to have a huge success to be financially successful. You don't have to build a company that owns the market or is a target for everybody, is the other way to look at it. You can build a pretty small company. Stacy has knee bands. You could probably be successful by selling knee bands to all the people that are bending down to pick their packages up. And if you guys could get together, you both could get rich.
Happen.
You can both get rich if you don't let a VC involved in it. But as somebody that is putting or influencing the putting in of money, other people's money into a deal, then I begin to look hard at the team. So I fall in love with the idea, and then I go through a test, and the first test with the team members is, am I curious in what they're about to say? And it sounds silly, but am I struggling not to fall asleep? I mean, that's a bad sign, because I'm not curious about what they want to say. And some people, I hate to say this, you just don't want to hear what they have to say. I mean, they come in so full of themselves, and they're projecting such irrational confidence, and then the next test is, are they interested to hear what I have to say about it? And if you can't have that exchange, how the hell is this 8-year, if it's fast, marriage going to work? So just that dialogue, and I don't care if I can't understand them very well at first, because a lot of people who pitch me are from other countries. Those of you who are from other countries here, thank you for coming. Really, I just, we would be nowhere. I get all choked up when I think about the courage that it takes to go to another country, completely outside of your comfort zone, and then start a company. Wow, that's pretty cool. And we attract people from all over the world who have that incredible courage in them, the hope. And oh God, who wouldn't pay to have a bunch of people like that pitching you? So I try to find out if I can communicate. Part of that is I want to know if I can trust them. So I have a fairly good memory, and now it's getting quite long as I get older. And I'll remember what people say to me. And if they change their story, I'll call them on it. Yeah. And if they deny that, as one of the candidates for our president will deny, right. I didn't say that. No, it says that.
I can't recall.
No, I didn't say that.
Yeah.
No, but it says he said it. No, anyway, I listen to that, and I'm very careful about not working with somebody that is going to hurt my reputation for being straightforward, because I'm trying to work with them. And then I don't worry as much as some other VCs worry about the team, because I know that if the idea is good and you're honest and everyone's working hard, you can gradually morph that team to fit the outcome. At QPass, we did multiple pivots, and in the end, I think one of the founders was still working in it, and he was the one that orchestrated the change out of the whole team. The idea, the company, is what's important. You have to grow that. People you have to treat with empathy and kindness and respect, but they may not be there always. So I'm not as team centric. You know, actually I had my worst outcome on a team that was a sure thing. You know, it was multiple successes. You know, it's, oh yes, we'll invest in them. Tom, will you sit on the board? Oh great, you know, and it didn't work at all. And these guys are amazing people, really, really successful. I don't want to name their names because I don't want to contribute to any kind of tarnishing of their reputation here, which doesn't deserve to be tarnished. They're serial entrepreneurs, but the team just, I hate to tell this anecdote, but when I was in one of my classes, I don't know if it was business school or engineering school, a professor did an experiment where they had random food pellets arrive in pigeon cages. They had a whole bunch of them in a warehouse, and they kept them all watered and fed, and the lights went on and off the right time, but they had random food pellets arrive in the pigeon cage, and after 30 days and 30 nights, every pigeon had figured out what made the food pellets come. Some were pecking the floor, others were spinning to the left, others were spinning to the right. It's a little bit like serial entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
You know, it worked last time the pellet came. If I just keep this up, more pellets will come. The same thing happens with VCs. It worked last time with this team.
Yeah.
You know, why isn't it working this time? So, you know, it's organic. You have to really understand the team and keep the team. Just because I don't worry about the team members as much as some other people, I worry way more about the team. Is it a fun place to work? Are people proud to work there? Do they feel good telling their spouse, I'm off to work today? It may be stressful, but you know, I pick one person in every company, and every time I'm in the company, not every time, because some of them I visit a lot, I take them off in a room. It's usually the personnel person, and I interview them extensively about the work environment.
Yeah.
You know, I ask them, is there any sexual harassment, racial harassment? Does anyone have to come to work with a sick feeling in their stomach? Yeah. You know, what's going on? And it's that kind of attention and nurturing that allows companies to survive the bumps and turns and the big bad guys who are going to come crush you, and you know, and sometimes who do.
Right.
So
When so again, long time doing this.
Yeah.
How do you look at kind of the state of VC now, or then versus where it is now? Has your outlook changed, or how you do it changed, or kind of how do you look at that right now with that experience?
Well, one really helpful thing that happened was I discovered I don't like being a VC. Right? So that's changed. I used to think it would be really fun.
Okay.
And in some ways it is. It's a lot easier than being an entrepreneur. I got to tell you, you know, they conjure up horrible stress because they might not raise their next fund if this fails.
Yeah.
You know, well, entrepreneurs might not have a job the next day if it fails. VCs generally have a long tail of security that they can rely on just out of their fees. I don't like it because it's like playing poker with a shared pile of chips, and nobody looks at their cards together. I mean, it's a weird dynamic. I'd much rather be on the entrepreneurial side. So I've shifted. I'm still paid by a couple of venture funds,
right? Yep.
To worry about their deals and to, you know, they think I know something about the future, and they may ask me questions, and it's actually the questions that teach me about the future more than anything else. So I get a lot out of my engagement with them, and I happen to work for the one company in particular that has very high values that I really I've never once felt compromised by my relationship. That's Oak, and and I'm related to Voyager. I've never been compromised by their values either. So I like VCs and I still work with them, but I don't like being one. The big change is that the world now can see all kinds of VCs all at once. It used to be a very private, siloed industry, and I hate to say this, sort of a boys' club industry. Now it's changing. For one thing, it's getting, like the rest of the world, a lot more heterogeneous. But now we can all see everything that they all do in a lot of ways, and there is no such thing as a template VC. You have some that are very early stage, some that are very late stage, who say they're early stage. Incidentally, most of them aren't anymore. There's some that have industry specialties, some have investment styles that are different, and we have the unicorn laddered funding phenomena that has come in, where actually the VCs are creating, in many ways, the valuations that they then can complain about later.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely.
And that's a new phenomenon.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it has changed a lot. There's more types of funds. There's many more of them. They're much more heterogeneous, and they're much more siloed and specialized. Yeah.
What do you like about the Seattle startup scene, right? In the last 5 years, how different it is. What are some things that you like about it right now? And then tell me some challenges too. So give me kind of both sides of that coin.
So I mean, it's Jack, a good question, because there are two sides of that coin. I love that there's so many of us now. I love that Seattle is on the map with one startup after another that has become great. In fact, we've always been that kind of a town. It just wasn't in the startup scene. Yeah. And the reason it's now in the startup scene is because startups are so easy to do now. So when I talk about how the environment we're all going to live in is going to shift, it already has shifted. That's why, all the people I talked to wouldn't be here. Well, maybe your companies actually could have survived no, yours is totally dependent on connectivity, Mike, that we didn't have before. And guess what it takes for you to take advantage of it in terms of resources? Very few. It used to be when I started a company here, you go, all right, where are we going to put our computers? Who's going to run the air conditioning? It was really hard. How many square feet do we need? Now we go, we'll just work out of our home for the first 2 years, okay? I did that product last night. Don't worry about it. What? It's so much easier because of the nature. But this town has always been an innovator in business models. If we use the collective we figured out that airplanes were buses. We figured out that the real way to make money was not building jet fighters or propeller fighters. It was to build buses, transport. Boeing got huge figuring out that they were buses. Someone else got the good name, Airbus. Why didn't they grab that name? But anyway,
opportunity lost.
Yeah, it was. We've had, let's take Jeff Bezos. I mean, books. That was a brand new business model, way of selling books. Microsoft taught the world that you can sell the same stuff. I use stuff. And I'm not anti-Microsoft. Actually, I'm very admiring of Microsoft and what they've done. But we could sell it over and over again. A CPU license in software was brand new when they started it. Nobody thought you could sell packaged software over. There were people who thought it was immoral. My God, you didn't spend any more money except the packaging. You had to sell it for that. It was weird.
Yeah.
We've
That's
invented
interesting
lots
to think
of
about.
business
Yeah,
models.
going back that far.
Incidentally, mobile also started here. We're the ones who discovered that it wasn't just for doctors, lawyers, and investment bankers who wanted to spend a lot of money and look cool. It was something that was going to be for everyone. So the startup scene here now is just wonderful. There's so many. The flip side of that coin was it used to be easy to be me. Now, oh my God, you've got to meet so many people and keep track of them all. And especially, most of them, like Mike said, oh yeah, I met you 10 years ago when you rejected my idea.
Right, Nick walked in, right? And said, I talked to you when we were here.
Nick, same
right?
thing. Nick said, it was this idea, I think. Look what I missed here, who knows? But I didn't know anything about what he was doing. So he said it's on mobile. I go, everything's going to be on mobile. So it wasn't something I knew about.
Yeah.
But anyway, so that it's so vibrant, so many people, so many companies starting. It's easy to do. We don't have a lot of the ecosystem that you normally think of as supporting it. There's nobody here that'll do a unicorn. There's no big funders that are Seattle-based and irrational. You have to go. You have to go find them in the Bay Area.
Yeah.
So.
So if you are, so some people young in startups, right? Just
Yeah.
getting started, whether they want to do one or in early stage, what are some pieces of advice that you have for them in your experience?
Well, the first thing I have is encouragement. You know, I've said for years that it's much easier for me to start a company than it is to get a job. You know, that's just sounds cool, right? That's not true. Believe me, does anyone want to hire me? I don't want to start another company. They're really hard. So don't be surprised when it's hard. You know, it really is. It takes everything you've got to not crack under the self-doubt that is inevitably generated just by the nature of trying to do something new in the world that hasn't happened. And then, just as you pick something that's new in the world that hasn't happened, you find out that there's 400 companies trying to do the same thing. And some of them are funded with huge amounts of money. And then Amazon decides to deliver food, and your little delivery service looks like an idiot play, you know. Yeah. Or you know, and it's hard to come home to your significant other and say, don't worry, it's going to be all right. Because sometimes it isn't going to be all right. So it takes a lot. It really does. But I got to tell you, it's amazing when it works. You know, and even if it doesn't work, you know, we were talking earlier, the fact that you can say to somebody sometime in the future, oh yeah, for 4 years I tried to get a startup off the ground, you know, and we got pretty far, and then in the end it turned out blah, 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 whatever it is. Some externality will hit you and stop you. Nobody can ever take those 4 years away from you. Those 4 years where you faced your inner doubts and kept going. And then just when you're feeling pretty good about it, because I can fool myself. It takes a lot of work, but I can fool myself at night, every night, that something's going to work out. I count only the good things before I go to sleep. And then just when you're sort of settled down, you go try and raise money from some VC who doesn't know shit about what you're actually worrying about and doing, and somehow is able to poke holes in the very fabric that you used the night before to go to sleep. You know, and you got to figure out, let me turn this off, sorry. So it's something that nobody can ever take away from you. And my advice is, you know, never let go of the fact that you were braver than a lot of other people to even try. And I know that that's soft and doesn't mean much, but it will as you go forward. The mere fact that you tried sets you apart, and you know, it's got my total empathy. You know, I walk this road every day. I have 5 companies right now that are it looks like end of life funding episodes. They all could go away if we don't get these fundings done. Yeah. And I am rising and falling with the emotional heartbeat of every one of those companies. And right now, I am pumping in CPR really hard. And every now and then I go, help, over here, over here. The CPR machine is getting a little tired. Yeah. You know, but at the end of it, when we all succeed, and we all will, there's no satisfaction that can meet that. Even if I'm not rich at the end or they're not rich, having a successful company that was created out of whole cloth, I hate to say this, it is its own reward, and it's not rationalization. So my advice is yeah, do start it if you think you've got what it takes, because the corollary of not starting it is you get to spend the rest of your life wondering what would have happened. You know, wondering why you couldn't step up at that moment in time. And you'll come up with reasons why. And sometimes they're out of your hands. Sometimes a mother has to go back and take care of a sick child, or a father does. Sometimes you have crises that happen in your family. Sometimes the people who came from other countries and are helping us keep this wonderful America going have to go back home because for whatever reasons. Hopefully not because a wall was built. I'm starting the rumor that he actually wants to build a wall to keep us all in.
Okay.
Right? So pass it on. Maybe that'll get him unelected. But anyway.
So we talk about it being so hard, right?
Yeah.
And we also talk about it being easier to do now than it ever has
before.
been. Right?
To start a company.
To start a company.
Yeah, yeah.
Does that message ever change? Like, you have to put everything into it, and it's so hard, and we have more tools and more resources and more people. Do you think that changes, or will it always be that hard to do? And do we put realistic expectations on our founders and entrepreneurs? How do you see that? What do you think about that?
So I do think that it's getting, in some way, easier emotionally. So you notice there's a lot of what I talk about that isn't about technology and market trends and smarts, and it's about resilience and values and all of that. And I think that a really hard startup for me would be one that I have to make a decision about values. That would be gut-wrenching. And I think that we are operating in a world right now where you people have support mechanisms that I never had when I was starting companies. Trying to go meet another entrepreneur when I was trying to start companies was random. I mean, it was really hard. You'd sit next to someone on an airplane, and you'd find out just as you land that you both were suffering from the same stress because the whole way you tried to act confident because you didn't know what you were next to. Right. Then you finally find another startup person, and you go, oh, I wish I'd talked about that the whole way across. And now you mix, you have support things with, people that fail, who picked themselves up and kept going. And I'm making it sound too hard, incidentally, because there's nothing like working with a team that succeeds, even if it's getting a release done. Yeah. And then watching the market take it. You haven't asked me what the key ingredients to an actual success are. I'm talking about all the slogging you go through. But when you get that product market fit, and you suddenly realize that everything you did before was a Sisyphusian effort to push a rock up a hill, and you're going to have to do it over and over and over again because nobody really wanted that product. And then when you find that perfect fit where you've come up with something that the world wondered how they got along without, or they suddenly can walk again, and you start getting people writing back to you, thanking you, or hugging you in their sweaty clothes. Wow. Yeah. That is so much fun. It's incredible. And if you can turn to a whole group of people and go, look what we did, they're nothing like that. A lot of big companies try to emulate that, but there's always 4 layers who are going to claim credit for it. Right. And the team down below goes, you know what? I know we did that, and we should feel proud of it, and we shouldn't worry that those yahoos are claiming credit for it, but it bugs the shit out of us. It's not the same, right. So
let's talk, characteristics of success, right? Talk about those.
Yeah. So, it's pretty simple. You have to come up with something that is almost unbelievably better than something that's already in the market. I mean, to get a startup wedged into a value chain, an enterprise, or in my case, carriers, how many people would take on a career of selling the large carriers? So Stacia knows that it's really hard. But when you can come up with a product because you've had enough vision and worked on it long enough, not in secret, but along a path where you're building credibility in the product and everything, that will overcome the inertia of an incumbent supplier and the inertia of the purchasing mechanism behind it. It's the key. You have to have that product that is so much better than what's out there. It's hard to do a Me Too, and you can scale that value down pretty low. If you're doing a delivery service, you want to do it in a way that the market has never seen before. We have things that you know, I keep using you two as examples, but there are other people that I met briefly in this room that probably have really good ones also. You know, Stacy has found that the current knee bands didn't work. They fell off and they weren't cool, and has brought something that works and is cool. You know, Mike has got an idea that I think is just really neat. It couldn't have existed. It could not have existed even 3 or 4 years ago, because you would be stuck. People would buy that product and go, what the hell, it didn't call me, because the connectivity wasn't there. You know, so you have to have a really good product market fit, and you have to have a plan to get there. And it can be small. It doesn't have to be big, but you better have something that's new and different. It may just be a location, incidentally. You may have got the perfect location for, oh, I'll come up with something, a drone delivery landing spot in your neighborhood. Yeah. You know, I'm sure there are people working on those, but maybe it's just a location.
Yeah. As you start to look out, right? We talked about this not being a profit, but what are kind of some of the things that you like or interested in or curious about that we're moving into?
So from my perspective, and it's a very narrow perspective, but I listened to the head of Nokia talking about the future for mobile, and everybody in the wireless businesses, the equipment suppliers, are trying to convince us that we won't be able to live without 5G, right? You won't be able to live. And you ask them why, and they go, if you even have to ask that question, you don't, I don't know. Right? Nobody really knows, all right? So, I mean, but you won't be able to live without it, right? So, and carriers, if you think you're going to exist without our equipment, you can forget about that too. Why? This stuff's working pretty well. Well, you'll see. You know, so we're at that stage of the market, right? So it's easy to discount that, but wow, I know this shit's going to work. It's going to be amazing if you just look at the specs of what 5G is going to deliver, and I know it's going to work, and I have some ideas of how it's going to change things. So to give you an idea, 5G table stakes is 100 megabits per second continuous. And it's huge. It's more than, what do you need that on your phone? You couldn't process that much on your phone. Well, it's also 10% of the latency that we've got now. So you know, when somebody lifts up the package off the package protector, did I call it right? Package what? Guard, package guard. His product's really cool. It alerts you. It's going to happen like that. It's going to happen so fast. It's just unbelievable. And the round trip communications is going to be a blink of an eye. And to give you an idea what that bandwidth means, right now we've got 8 people or so in here with glasses on, something like that. I just make numbers up, but they're almost always right. Everyone's going to have glasses on. We're all going to be wearing glasses. Believe me. And we're going to, the Nokia guy, I was going to tell the story, he showed a picture of everyone standing in an airport. This was 15 years ago. And everyone's on the phone. Everyone. This picture of people standing around. Plane had just been canceled, probably. Everybody called and said, I'm late. Right? Then 10 years later, same basic scene, everybody's looking down at their phone. And he asked the question, what's it going to look like 5 years from now? Because he was hyping 5G. It's really 10 years from now. But the people in this room had better understand that this connectivity is going to change the way we relate to our surroundings. So one of the things that's going to happen is you're going to walk into a facility like this, and if it's not connected, it's going to be like the lights are out, and you're stumbling around with a flashlight. If it's connected, everything you're used to is going to work. I'll give you a few ideas. Your glasses are going to be an interaction device only. They're going to be fed actual baseband images and audio from the connected world around you, and they're going to be connecting devices from all over the world. You know, you're going to be able to watch the TV that was streaming at home, but you're going to be able to see your computer screen that you left on a desk somewhere that you're not in front of. You're going to have all kinds of, I not virtual reality, but augmented reality. When you meet somebody that you're going to come up to me, Mike, and say, "Oh yeah, I met you and you rejected executive wireless." You're probably impressed. My short-term memory worked for that, right? But and I'm going to be sitting there going, "Oh, hi, Mike. How did executive wireless? Oh, I see you sold that already. What are you working? Oh no, I can see that you're already working on this package protector." And it's almost going to be viewed as you're just not with it at all if you can't do that. But it's ubiquitous connectivity. A lot of people are going to fight it. Driverless cars, of course. Of course.
Why do you go back and say people are going to fight it? What's your thought there?
Because everybody fights something that
change.
they can't imagine.
Yeah.
They always fight. Somebody is bound to. If you can't imagine it, the automatic reaction is not, "Ooh, I can't wait to stumble into something that confuses me even more than the world does now." Nobody does that.
Right.
They all go, "God, I just wish it was the days when I knew where my goddamn phone was because it was attached to the wall, and I don't have to go look for it." So, I'm sorry. Yeah,
I had to think about that for a minute. Like, I do remember that.
It's true. It's true.
I lose my phone all the time now. Damn it.
What the hell?
It's so much easier.
Yeah, and people are going to say, it used to be in the morning when I woke up, my hands were shaking. Those rotary dials were easy. Right? These buttons, I keep missing it. So. But there's always going to be people that fight this automatically because it is confusing and hard. I'm trying to get broadband into the place I spend most of my time at now, up in the islands, and there's people fighting it. What do I need that for? Do you know how you get through to them? Because your grandkids won't want to visit you anymore.
Right.
You gotta fight it emotionally because it ain't rational.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
It's
very true. True. What is one question you wish that people would ask you that they don't?
Oh wow. I just had this happen the other day. I went, why didn't you ask the? They never ask me, and I'm going to put myself in the role of a venture capitalist. I used to look at, one deal face to face a day, probably 4 or 5 business plans a day that I'd read, hundreds and hundreds. I added up when I reviewed 450 business plans in detail, face to face 1 year, and hardly anyone would ask me what I would hope for out of the relationship. What are you looking for, Tom, in the relationship? What would be a great outcome for you? They never ask it. They're all ready to answer your questions. They're all they don't ask enough questions to begin with. That was a great question, dodging the tough part, coming up with a real one. But that is the issue. I don't get asked enough questions about what it is that I'm interested in, what it is I would like out of the relationship.
All these companies you've been involved with,
Yeah.
right? What do you want them to remember about you, about your involvement in their companies?
Again, I'm treading on thin ice with my wife because she thinks I've managed to maneuver myself into a position where if I'm not there, they're not there. I really want people to be proud of the fact that they worked in a company, and I want to feel that pride also. I want people to walk out going, yeah, I was part of Glimpse when it was just 35 people, and I was in the founding part of Autograph. I remember when Tom used to blah 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 take us all out sailing on his boat, and I still want to be part of it when it actually becomes real and becomes something that people walk home with and can say to their spouse or loved one, see, it was worth all the effort. I told you it would work out. And I
love the sense of pride.
Yeah, and I just want to be proud of my involvement in it. I don't ever want to be I don't ever want to lose the reputation that I've carefully nurtured for being honest and straightforward, and I'm bound to piss a few people off, I'm sure, as I go through life, but I want to be remembered as someone that was very straight about a lot of things, and people felt confident dedicating a lot of their life to to working in an environment that I, to a small degree, helped structure. Awesome. So, again, it's soft stuff. It's, maybe that happens.
All right, we'll take some questions in just a minute, but I think,
Sure.
I don't know if we've ever done it this way, but I think you have to end with your joke. Because
like that?
I think you have to do it.
Yeah, all right, okay.
Yeah,
well,
I think so.
I don't know how many of you know this, but I'm good for an endless amount of jokes. I don't know what I could have done with the brain space I used up with jokes, but it's rather inexhaustible. It's amazing. I race sailboats to Hawaii, and I tell the crew that I've got 12 days of food, but only 10 days of jokes. And I'm not sure which motivates them more, but we set a course record last time we went, 10 and a half days. But and it's since been eclipsed. But the joke that really got me going is the joke about a Yankee venture capitalist. It's one of my favorite ones. So this Yankee venture capitalist goes on vacation in Ireland, and he wakes up and early in the morning, he goes out for a walk, and he finds a shepherd in the middle of nowhere guarding his flock. And he walks up behind the shepherd and says, "Morning!" And the shepherd whirls around and says, "Oh, you scared me half to death." And the VC says, "Are you a betting man?" And the shepherd says, "Well, at times I do." He says, "I'll bet you $100 against one of your sheep. I can tell you how many sheep you got in this valley." And the shepherd thinks to himself, all day long, all I do is count my sheep. There's no way this fellow's going to know. He says, "All right, you're on." So the VC takes an envelope out of his pocket and turns it over, looks across the valley. He looks down and he goes, 719. He says, "This will be more than count." He says, "I don't know how you did that, but you won fair and square. Take your pick." So the VC bends down, picks an animal up, and starts walking away. The shepherd says, "Hold on now." He says, "How about double or nothing?" So the VC says, "What's the bet?" He said, "I bet I can tell you what profession you are now." So the VC thinks to himself, an Irish shepherd in the middle of nowhere, probably even heard of a venture capitalist. He goes, "All right, you're on." He goes, "I bet you're one of those venture capital fellas now, aren't you?" He goes, "Well, yeah, I am. Here's your animal. Here's $100. How in the world did you know?" He says, "Well, first of all, you showed up largely uninvited. Second of all, you did a fantastic back of the envelope analysis. I'll never for the life of me know how you did that. And then in the end, you picked the dog."
There we go. All right, who's got a question for Tom? Where are we going to go? Right here, please.
First of all, thanks, Tom. It was great to hear your story.
Sure.
Joke.
Yeah, it was fun.
So how far along, putting on your VC hat
Yeah.
right now, how far along do you like to see startups before, you give funding? Do you give seed funding, or is it more Series A and B?
All right, I'm going to answer that in two ways. One is, how far along do I like to see the companies? And it's one of the reasons I'm not a VC anymore. I like to see them when the idea is brand new. I like to be part of the founding team where the idea is getting developed, because most of the ideas, when they just start, have only one ingredient that makes any sense, which is passion and knowledge. I mean, everyone, I'll use Stacy and Mike again, they both had personal experiences that motivated them to come up with an idea. And I love to be there at that moment and go, wow, where could this go? What could happen? Have we thought of that? So I like to be early on. Now, the real answer as a VC is VCs never like to be that early on. It's way too much work. It's way, you're too involved. How can you say no to an idea where they listen to your advice? So what VCs like to see, and my advice to people who decide they have a big enough idea where they need the funding to bring in VCs, is go get friends and family and angel investors to get you to the point where there is a really concrete valuation milestone around the corner. And that really concrete valuation milestone, depending on the style of the investor, can either be product/technical or market/acceptance. And if you're in very close to that kind of validation point, then you can go talk to VCs, because they love bets like that. What they can't stand are bets that sound like, "We got a great team."
There's that face, right? Confusion, indifference.
And what are you going to do with it? Yeah, well, there's a space out there that is amazingly, we just can't stand vague good teams invest in us. And so a lot of it sounds like that. When there isn't a concrete valuation milestone, it means not enough work has been done. Yeah.
Hi, Tom. What outcome are you looking for from this relationship?
What? What outcome I want from this relationship?
I'm kidding.
Well, no, I'll tell you. I want you guys to go home and go, I had so much fun tonight. It's pretty simple. All right. Seriously, do you have a real question?
Yeah.
In all seriousness, there are a lot of, there's too much focus on unicorns right now. It's like, oh, it's a
Yeah.
unicorn, but there's a lot of things that add value to a lot of people's lives.
Yeah.
That are going to be a lot more sturdy in the coming changes that are going to be hitting the economy
Right.
in the next 10 years. How have you had any experience talking people down away from like stop thinking about the exit, stop thinking about that big valuation at the end?
Well, look, I've had a lot of experience trying to tell people I work with to not worry about the unicorns. I'm sorry, we're not a unicorn. No. And there's a definition of a unicorn that I use, which is, a unicorn is a financial layering, a pyramiding of expectations and performance that really is going for conquering market share in what looks like a huge market. And the way these valuations get up is because they really know they have to raise a lot of money, but they can't take all the value. So they do a layered financing with milestone achievements. And what you don't see is that many of the unicorns go away, and a lot of them may succeed, but with management teams that are totally different, because the original ones have been taken out somewhere on Sand Hill Road and shot and are buried in unmarked graves. So I spend a lot of time saying, just don't worry, that's not the real value of the company. It's the financial structure that had to get created in order to raise enough capital to go after a market that looks like it's going to be a winner-take-all market, which a lot of markets can become. There's always so. I mean, we may be sitting in the middle of our own local unicorn here, but I don't blame OfferUp for trying to raise enough money to win this race. I'm kind of I admire the hell out of them. So, but it's a different approach. To answer your question in a more probably personal way, you can build real value by finding a good product market fit, assembling a team, motivating them emotionally and financially so they can go through the ups and downs, and 8 to 10 years later emerge as a valuable company. And people can be very happy living lives like that. Yeah, sure.
Next question.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah, please.
So, big mobile fan too. 5G, gotta have it. Right? No, I guess you see a lot of technology in the marketplace. Is there anything that you're looking at right now that maybe the technology that we're not aware of that you feel is going to have a really substantive impact on people's daily lives?
So kind of a sleeper technology
Yeah.
type of question, is that right?
I mean, not necessarily sleeper. Just like for example, well, actually, I don't want to put words in your mouth.
Yeah, so let me answer the question there. First of all, if I have an idea or I see something that I think nobody else has seen, I'm deeply suspicious. That just doesn't happen. I think every good idea is discovered simultaneously in about 5 places around the world. I don't know where they are or what, but you're not going to be alone in that idea. Some things, I usually look at technologies, and I am a late personal adapter of technologies. I have to say package card, I might be early. I can understand how that works and why it's valuable. I really can. And I've already had my knee replaced. But yeah, right. Yeah, right. But I have to say, I've got a company that has been started by a friend, and incidentally, I talk to friends, people I've gone through the wars with, who want to start companies all day long, and I'm trying to back off from being an active chairman in any more companies until a few of the ones I'm active in now get sold or get bought is a better way to look at it. But one of them right now is in virtual reality and augmented reality, using some pretty simple, Google Glass type approach. And I've had my eyes opened up to what is possible in that domain. And that coupled with the ubiquitous low latency, high bandwidth connectivity that's represented by 5G, and the concept that spaces are going to be instrumented, spaces are going to be connected. I think that world of virtual reality, and there won't be big, huge goggles. There'll be see-through glasses. For a while, cheap ones are going to be flip-ups. I'm amazed at what that's going to do to us. And along the way, we're going to get driverless cars for free almost out of that. A lot of the technologies that are being put in place, but that's not new. I came back from CTIA completely convinced that driverless cars are here, and I got a resounding duh. I already have my Tesla park itself. And I went, oh, really? That was the guy
Uber in
sitting next to
Pittsburgh
me.
today, right?
I know, Uber
Yeah.
in Pittsburgh has a driverless car. It's not driverless. They have one guy behind the wheel, probably very nervous, and the engineer next to him trying to look calm. Right? So it's not quite. And the person in the back, they're riding for free and wish they were paying. Because they'd be in someone else's car. Did you see that thing? It has this little twirly, I guess that's a radar on it. That doesn't look happy. What if it stops? Maybe they have a whirring noise like the spokes on a bicycle. You used to put cards in.
Put the cards in it,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, good, the radar's still working.
Do you have one more question for us, and we'll go on?
I'm curious to hear what thoughts you have about the contraction of VC in Seattle, especially as it relates to the kind of growth of VC around the world, and Silicon Valley, and even Boston, and New York, other places, and what that means for early stage entrepreneurs at the seed and A level.
Yeah.
Because I've been down on flights down in the Bay Area a lot on Sand Hill Road, and it's a totally different world down there than it is here in terms of looking at notes, evaluations, all that. So I'm just curious, kind of what you think needs to happen, at the early stage.
Well,
if anything.
Well, no, but look, it's a great question because, and it's one that is debated all the time. I had a guy I worked with who was on the QPass board with me. A guy who works with was a partner of Venrock, and he had been working in actually on Sand Hill Road for 20 years. I met him when he was in New York as a VC there. Venrock had a really good name, still does, and he never did a deal in the Valley. He couldn't find one. He says you have to work so hard, and the valuations are so high that environment, that overheated, hyped environment, didn't happen just because they live in California. It happened because there were too many of them chasing relatively few deals, and they began to have to get in faster and faster. And then in order to make sure they lowered the risk, they had to overfund these. And guess what? The returns are still the same as the people up here who are much more value investors. And the returns for the entrepreneurs are frequently the same.
Why aren't we seeing more seed and A-level VC firms, though?
So,
where you see Madrona contracting to even a certain degree?
because they're figuring out that if you raise a lot of money, you got to invest it. And most startups don't need that much money. If you go into an overheated, Bay Area and go for market domination 5 years out, you can find a home for hundreds of millions of dollars. And that's what some of those funds have to put in. So they're creating the vehicle that allows them to put that in. And we're sitting up here going, why don't we have any of that? Well, I don't want any of that. Now, what I want, and I think what you all want, is you want people, and I run into them all the time, who are going to start a $10 million fund. And you go, well, how are you going to live on that? And they go, well, I'm not living on much now anyway. This is just instead of starting a company, I tried that 3 times and it didn't work. Maybe a fund, I got $10 million and I can get, 200,000 that I'll split between the 3 of us, and it's better than where I was. And then if we get lucky, it'll get bigger. We need people like that to match
micro VC, maybe.
Yeah, and people
Not quite
hopefully.
angel, not quite
Right. We need that middle ground, and there are a lot of little funds that are trying to start up, and then they run into, oh yeah, how can you compare to Madrona is getting smaller because I don't know this for a fact, and say I like the people at Madrona, but I gave up VC because I don't like being a VC very much, but also because I had to go to a $150 million fund in order to be relevant to a lot of entrepreneurs who were going to get on an airplane and go down to the valley. Whereas actually, I could have gotten 3 or 4 if I knew what I know now. Back when I had my own funds, I wouldn't have done as many deals, and they would have been, I think, more carefully selected. But a $30 million fund can easily get 5, 6, 7 good companies off the ground, and if you do it right, you will get follow-on investments. So, I don't think we have enough small funds because people want to get rich off, the fees and count and all of that. You get a few successes under your belt, though, and they don't have to be huge successes. You invest at a post money of 6, you put $2 million in, and you sell it for 24. Wow, that's kind of a cool way to make a living. And the people that had $4 million of value when you put your 2 in, they just exited with probably by then 18. Wow. Even if you spread that out around 20 people, they all feel good about that, and they'll go do another one. So that's more what we need, and that relates to your unicorn value building question.
Awesome.
So I think that's probably it.
Awesome. All right, we'll wrap up there.